Greetings, fellow songwriters and seekers, and welcome back to Muse Measure. If you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button down below. Leslie from Syracuse writes, when a song starts to feel too clear or on the nose, how do you know whether to lean into that directness or pull back into metaphor, especially if the emotional truth feels urgent? Wow, that's a very, very deep question, and I wish there was a clear answer to that, but it's really song by song that you have to answer that question. So if it's too on the nose, well, what do we mean by that? It's too on the nose. It's like it's being too direct, what it's saying. Well, you might think about who is your audience. I don't mean the people listening to your songs, and because there's just too many of them. Hopefully you have a big audience. I hope to have a big audience someday. But even if I have, let's say a couple hundred people that listen to my music in over the span of 10 years or something like that, it's too many people to think about. What I mean by your audience is like, who is this song written for? Or who are you trying to communicate to? And it's really helpful to, even if you have no one in mind, to think of like, who am I communicating this with? Am I communicating this to a child? Am I communicating this to a lover? Am I communicating this to a parent, to a friend? And then you would think about, well, how are they going to receive this message? So when you want to tell the truth, to somebody, you still have to tell it slant, because you don't want them to become too defensive or to become like overwhelmed by what you're saying. Well, you want them to be overwhelmed emotionally, right? Because you want to have this great experience, but this intense emotional experience. But what you really want to do is to communicate your message to them. And what would be the most effective way of doing that? So there's qualifying things that you can say to kind of temper your message. And then, yes, falling back into metaphor. So explaining it. So if I just come out and say, you're an asshole, well, maybe I should do some explaining there. Maybe I should temper that with why and get into the details of it. And then as far as bringing metaphor in, that's really, really useful for connecting it to something that is emotional, because the emotions can't always be expressed directly with just very opaque language where you just say, the dog crossed the street. That doesn't really deliver any message, right? But if you add a metaphor to it, like, the dog crossed the street like a limbering old man on a cane with his teeth falling out and drooling on the sidewalk. Now all of a sudden the emotion and the tragedy of the dog crossing the street is expressed. So metaphors are really good for connecting to some kind of sense of emotion, where it takes not only direct experience, like you're actually experiencing it in real time, you're living the story, you're not, it's like the movie of your life is going on and you're living it directly. That's very different than connecting it metaphorically, which makes your mind and your imagination work together. The concepts and the sensory experiences all kind of work together to kind of connect with something, and usually there's some kind of emotional resonance. And there should be an emotional resonance if you are using metaphors, because that's really the effectiveness of using metaphors. And the music does a lot of the work too. I mean, music is basically the tool that we have to most directly express emotions, which can't be often expressed in words. And the closest we get to with words are metaphors and similes to express our emotions. Like, your words were like a dagger to my heart, right? That's a cliche, but it is a metaphor, right? And it connects the actual lived experience, which is someone saying something to someone, but then there's also the emotional element, which is interior, and that metaphor allows us to experience what that felt like, this piercing in the chest. We actually feel it viscerally. Okay? So when you want to use metaphors is when you have something emotional that you want to express, that direct language or description of what is going on, the play-by-play of the scene of what's happening, when you're telling a story about what happened. You use metaphors when you want to communicate something that cannot be expressed by just an objective observer. You know, if we had set up a camera and we watched it and we saw the, you know, the who, what, where, when, why, and how, that doesn't deliver what's going on in the interior of the people in the scene, the character of them, right? Now, their facial expressions might do that, but we don't have very good words for facial expressions. I mean, we have some words for them, but it doesn't really, seeing the facial expressions, we might be able to infer and have compassion and empathize with that person by looking at their facial expressions. But if they can describe what's going on inside them and using metaphors to do so, we can actually experience the interior as well. And so that's when I'd say switch from direct language into metaphorical speaking is when you want to express something emotionally. Now, you may not have to. You could do so with the music. So you can make your chord changes express the emotion and have the words just be the direct play-by-play of what's going on. And if that works, if you feel like that conveys the message. But if it's not doing enough, if the chord changes and the melody are not conveying some kind of sense of deep sadness or sorrow, then that's when you bring in the metaphor. I think always start with direct language. Try to say it as plainly and as clearly as you can. But yeah, so think about what the impact's going to be. As Emily Dickinson said, tell the truth, but tell it slant. Because you are using language as a rhetorical device. You're trying to get some kind of affect. You're not just expressing, or retelling what happened. You're trying to convey a message, and you're trying to have your listener understand and resonate with that, and have some kind of compassionate moment with you as a songwriter and as an artist. So that's when you want to bring in metaphor, when the music and the direct lyrics are not doing the job of conveying the emotion. All right, I hope that helps. It's hard to talk about these things because we don't really have the words for them. And so that's why I'm kind of stumbling and trying to, doing all these contortions to make sense of this. And it is hard. It's something we have to grapple with. But it's good that you ask this question and that you get this point brought up, because this is something we all have to deal with as songwriters, as poets, and as artists. All right, I hope that was helpful. If I didn't quite get to your point, please let me know in the comments, and I'll try to do a better job next time. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, and best of luck with your songwriting and your spiritual practice. All right, take care.